Hi everybody, before we start, because I forgot to say this before the video, so I'm now having to edit it in, I just wanted to let you know, just to cover myself, that this is not financial advice. Just because I'm doing things doesn't mean you do things. Our personal circumstances are different. I am nothing but a disembodied voice on the internet and should not be followed for financial advice. So while this is a window into my planning, it may not be suitable for you. And I forgot to say this in the video as well, but closer to my retirement, I will very likely have an appointment with a financial advisor just to make sure that I'm doing my withdrawals in the most tax efficient way. Hello everybody, welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at what is very loosely my retirement plan. The reason I say loosely, even though I've been as detailed as I can, is because we are 20 years out from retirement, which means that nothing in this plan, which is the great conundrum of retirement planning, nothing in this plan is going to be true by the time I get to retirement. But I have to have an idea of where I'm heading for. Please excuse me if I sound a little bit nasally today. I've got a little bit of a stuffy nose. Now, I know when I retire, there's going to be certain things I need to do, but I don't know how much those things will cost. So the next best thing I can do is to say, okay, how much do they cost now? And then go in and check on them every year or so and make changes as we go to check that I'm still on track. And that's something I'm hoping to add to this channel and just to check in and how things have changed. And I'll give you an example of some things that will change every year. So the first thing you have to do really is decide what retirement looks like for you. Now, this is going to be different for every single person, but the things I want to do, I need to identify my income needs, which again will change, but based on what I know now. So we're going to do that in this video. I need to secure my retirement income. I've got some ideas for that. I personally will need to buy a home. Now, I've put not leasehold here. If you're not from the UK, in the UK, we have two types of ownership on housing. We have freehold, where you own the house and the ground it's on, and you have leasehold, where a home has been built on ground that you don't own. You own the building on it, not the ground it sits on. Now, when you do leasehold, you pay something called ground rent, and it can be a really small charge, and I do believe there were changes in the law quite recently to phase out leasehold housing, but not leasehold apartments. Now, leasehold apartments are a whole nother thing, and they usually come with service charges. That's not something I want to have to factor in, so I prefer to own it free and clear. And my last requirement is when I settle somewhere, to settle somewhere with good transport links, because I technically have a license, but I hate driving, and I don't want to if I don't have to. And actually, in the UK, when you become an old age pensioner, you get like a free bus pass and things, so you can use the system. Now, my ideal retirement is not going to be the same as everyone else's. You'll notice when it comes to retirement, a lot of people prioritize travel, for example. I'm not prioritizing that because I've spent a lot of my life traveling. I want to settle down, not go out more. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to take holidays and things, but I'd love to explore a little bit more locally around where I'm from instead of the far-flung places, which I know is not necessarily the normal way to do it. But I have been quite fortunate in my life to have the opportunity to do that pre-retirement. Now, a couple of things you need to know about my retirement planning. I am assuming that I'm doing this single. Yes, that might change, but I know myself. I know I'm not particularly interested in marriage. If it changes, it changes. But if it doesn't, let's plan for what I think will happen. Generally, if you do end up as part of a couple, it just means combining your bills. So even though they go up, they tend to be cheaper on a per person base. So if I plan for single and I end up being a couple, it'll probably just get easier. The second assumption I have is that I'm going to be getting full state pension. I am working on that right now. State pension is something you get in the UK when you have paid into your national insurance. You have to pay in for over 10 years and up to 35. If you pay anything between those, it comes on a sliding scale of how much you get. If you pay 35 years, you get the full amount. I'm currently on track to pay 35 years, so I'm assuming the full amount of pension, and we'll talk about pension later. I'm also going into this for my own personal savings, which we're going to get into in a moment. So now we know what roughly my retirement needs to look like or wants to look like based on this moment right here, because obviously things change. Let's take a look at some of the things you need and where I am with this list to be able to roughly plan out your retirement. So first, you need to start a savings account for retirement. I have done this. I have my state pension, I have a private pension, and I also have private savings that are more easily accessible because once you pay into a pension, you can't take it out until you retire. Second, it's recommended you downsize debt. I have already done this. Once you are on a limited income or a fixed income, you don't want to be dealing with debt on top of it. It just sucks up your money. So I've taken care of that. That's a tick. The things we're going to be looking at today are calculated income needed for retirement expenses. This will change, but as it stands today, budgeted costs upon retirement and planned income sources in broad strokes. And as you can see from my facts at the side, I'm 41 years old today. I'm planning to retire between the age of 60 and 61, depending on what I'm working and when it finishes, which means I have 19 to 20 years left to plan. Now, the first big question is how much money can I get in that time? Based on what I'm paying in right now, if I continued to pay into my two accounts, to my pension and to my savings, these are the numbers that the calculator site came up with. So in my pension right now, I have about £40,000. Now I've assumed a yearly return of 5%. Here's the reason I've settled on 5. I know that it can change and it will change. It's not an even thing. But like I said, you have to have a number. So I worked with the presumption that the stock market on average long term returns 8 to 10%. I'm going to split that down the middle. I'm going to make it 9. I'm then going to take off 3% for inflation long term. And then I'm going to take off my costs, which are 0.3%. That takes me down to about 5.7. And then I'm going to round it down to 5. Nobody can predict the stock market, so I'm just doing the best I can. I do have quite a long investment window though. And I'm not one to freak out over stock markets, so I've got quite a high appetite for risk. I really don't mind it. I don't dabble with single stocks. I just do global trackers, so I really don't mind my money just doing what it needs to do. Now, in my savings account, I currently have about 28,000. Obviously, it varies. And over the next 19 to 20 years, I'm expecting that to grow. I am looking at its growth under the same circumstances as the pension. So according to this projection from the calculator site I was using, my pension at the end of this should have 577,000 and my savings should have 546. Now I'm one to round down when I'm not sure. So we're going to say for the sake of planning, my pension ends up having 550,000 and my savings end up having 525. So those are the basic numbers I'm working with for these projections. Now, as I said, there are some things my pension needs to do. Because I am currently planning to retire single, my main concern really is securing income. Now, the state pension is for life, so I would get that. And there is a chance if I just did drawdown for the whole thing, I could get more money. But I don't want to be worried that my income... But the thing with the state pension is even though it goes up every year, it's not quite enough to live with minimum standard in the UK, according to research. There's a very often quoted set of numbers that I will try and find a picture of. There was also another set of research done by Hargreaves Lansdown, I think, one of the big pension sites, and the numbers were a little different. They were a little more manageable. I will also try and find those numbers. Now, this is the part of the plan that is the least fixed, you might say, because currently the plan for the pension is to take a good portion of it, say 200,000, and buy an annuity. And the reason for that is an annuity secures income for life. So I would know that once my state pension started, I would be guaranteed over the minimum amount of living. Because I just worry, if the stock market does go down, I do have things in place to try and protect myself, but I don't want to be playing that game on a fixed income. It's all very well now that I'm working and I get money in, so I don't really need to worry what the stock market does to an extent. But if I were completely reliant on it for my income, I don't think I would be that chill. And it's just one anxiety you don't need, you know? So out of my 550,000, I'd probably transfer 200,000 over to an annuity, depending on what the annuity rates were at the time. If the rates were terrible, then I'd probably just go full drawdown. So that would leave me 250,000 invested in my pension. That is fine. That I'm happy to leave invested. I might change the weighting of my investments, but I'm happy to leave it invested, and it can continue to grow as I'm doing other things. It also gives me the freedom to draw down money while I'm waiting for state pension to kick in, which will help to support my life while my income is less. Now, out of my savings, I need to buy a house. I know 200,000 is not a lot for a house, but you have to consider a couple of things. One, I am only one person. I only need a little house. And two, I have the fortune to be able to settle anywhere I like in the UK because my family is quite scattered. I don't need to be near to any of them. And I don't even know who's going to be there when I retire. So you can't place yourself based on anybody else is what I'm saying. I can always travel to them if they're around. So I'm fine with moving further north to be able to get better prices on housing. And the kind of housing I would want is quite readily available. So I'm earmarking 200,000. I'm also going to have 50,000 sitting in cash. I'll put it in a high yield, I'll put it wherever. But the reason for that is if I am drawing down anything from my pension and the markets do just go nuts, I don't want to be drawing on compromised assets. So if there was a crash and my portfolio needed a little bit of time to recover, I would be able to just use the cash instead of selling the stocks. So that would leave me with 175,000 in savings, which means altogether I'd have 425,000. Now, let's look at income. Now, my state pension at the moment is currently meant to be paid when I turn 67. For the sake of this, I am using 68, just in case it goes up again before I retire. Based on current numbers, that means 11,500, which ends up being 958 a month. Now, you technically get paid weekly. So what I've done there is I've times 52 weeks and I've divided it by 12 to get the average because obviously months are not the same length. If I were to spend 200,000 based on current annuity rates, I ran it through a quote generator, then that would mean I could get 14,400 under the conditions I set a year, which would be about 1,200 a month. The plan then would be to take a small amount out of my savings every month to top that up. It would probably be about 300 or so, which annually would give me 3,600. So the numbers I'd be looking at before my state pension starts, because obviously I am planning to retire at 60, so I need to fill that gap, would be 1,500 a month, which would be 18,000 a year. And the numbers I'd be looking at after my state pension are 2,458 a month, or about 29,500 a year. Now, the thing with state pension is currently, and I can only say currently because obviously government initiatives change, currently it's triple locked. And basically the triple lock is a measure that was put in place, I can't remember exactly when, a little while ago, to help prevent extreme poverty in old age, just for the people who really had nothing, you know? Because as I've said, the pension doesn't cover a minimum standard of living, but it gets you further there. So basically what the triple lock does is to take three measures. It says either we're going to put it up by 2.5%, or we're going to look at the level of inflation and we're going to put it up by that, or we're going to look at the level of wage growth and we're going to put it up by that. And then it chooses whatever the highest figure is to make sure that they're not falling behind. So for example, when inflation was going crazy, the state pension went up by something like 10 or 11%, something like that. So in the next tax year, which is April 2025, the increase has been pegged to wage growth. So it's going to rise by 4.1%. Now, what that means is, assuming this were to stay in place, I would have part of my income that was at the very least inflation protected. So when I say 11,500, I know from April it's going up to like 11,900 and something, which is why I haven't made changes to the thing I'm about to show you. So let's take a look at roughly the costs I would have in retirement. Now, to do this, because costs are very different in different places, I have just written into Google, what are the average costs for X? Okay. Obviously, if I were living in London, things would be a lot more expensive. I'm planning to live in the north at this point because things do tend to be a bit cheaper there. But as always, they're just estimates, and I'll redo this maybe once a year. Maybe when the state pension gets announced, every year I'll come back and I'll edit my figures and just see that we're up to date. So I went into, I can't remember where I got this actually, but there are a dozen online. It's a retirement income calculator where you fill in kind of how much it will be and it tells you what your monthly expenses will be. Retirement expense calculator, sorry about that. So I looked into it, and rent and service charge, I wouldn't be renting and I wouldn't have a service charge, so that would be zero. Mortgage, that would be zero, I'd buy in cash. Council tax, I looked up average band A, I got a few lists, and as a single person, I'd have a 25% discount. So that would be 1,200-ish, but I'm willing to change that. Maintenance and service charges, all I've done here, because I would have a separate fund for like maintenance of the house and things, I'm just putting £50 in as a way to keep that ticking over. There wouldn't be an official charge attached to the property, but obviously you need to keep up with these things. Gas and electricity, I'm just putting it a straight 1,000 a year. That will change as things go, but I've got no idea how much it would cost. So there we go. Again, working on kind of averages and then overestimating where I can. I'm assuming I wouldn't have heating oil, water. I'm just putting it £50 a month. I like that in this calculator, you can switch between month and year, depending on what you know. I've got no idea for phone, TV and broadband. I've just put 75 at each. So covering communications would be 150. I am someone who needs good internet. Insurance bills, I've just put 300 for the year for buildings and contents. I'd only have a little place. But again, I'll relook at it later. And travel, medical, pet, other insurances, I've put 150 for like a private medical insurance, but closer to the time I'd have to see how much that would actually cost. I would prefer to have private medical insurance as I get older though. It's great to have the NHS, but there is a toss-up for having that service, and it's usually time. So I'd want to be secure in the knowledge that I could go somewhere and be seen quickly. Fuel and car tax, not planning on having a car. Car maintenance, not planning on having a car. Public transport, I've just put as 100. Like I figure that's how much a bus pass would cost a month. I don't know, but we'll see. Into household expenses, I've put 400 a month for food and general shopping. I don't drink, and I don't smoke, so alcohol and tobacco are zero. Clothes, realistically, I have no idea. I've put £60 a month to have something there. Pets, I don't have any. If that changes, I will change it. I'm actually allergic to cats, which would be the pet I want, so... Leisure, I've just put 100 a month in for the sake of putting something. It would depend what I wanted to do, obviously. Healthcare, I've put 25 because I'd have health insurance, so this is for like over-the-counter stuff if I needed to get paracetamol or something. Loan repayments, I don't have any. Savings, Christmas, holiday fund, etc. I've just put £50 a month there for gifts and things, but I'll decide closer to the time. So when we look at that, altogether, that's £1,426 to basically keep my life afloat. Now, according to the calculator, before the state pension kicked in, if I did it the way I was planning, which was the 300 and the 1,200, I'd have 1,500 gross. I've told them these numbers are gross. And then they've calculated some kind of tax for me. So 1,409 is what they've come up with. I'm guessing they've just taken the personal allowance and then said 20% income tax. So same over here. If I add the state pension, which will be after 68 in these calculations, then I would end up with 2,175 a month. So that means that technically I'd be about £17, something very small, short in the pre-pension time. This is fine because I'm approximating numbers. I don't need to get bogged down in that right now, but it's more or less there. And if it came down to taking out an extra 50 quid from my personal pension, no harm, no foul. And obviously once the state pension starts, I would have enough money to live. Now, I did work out that if we went on, it was either £300 or £400 a month, I can't remember which, and did that for 8 years until the pension started, that would end up being just under £40,000. So I've got more than enough in savings to do that. And then once the pension starts, I could either keep taking that out or I could stop because I'd have enough to cover. So the plan is to work on a reasonable income. I want to have some little luxuries, but nothing too crazy. But I'm willing to be a bit more frugal in the beginning of it if it means, waiting for the state pension for that. And then I should be all set up, and what's left in my pots, while I might have a few little withdrawals if I decide I do want to do a holiday or something like that, I'll have a nice big chunk there that will keep growing because it will remain invested. But also it's available if in my latter years I need care or something like that, things that get very expensive. I will have a source of money I can draw on. Okay, everyone, so that's everything I have for you. I do realize as I do this that it is subject to change. Like, there is no way 20 years in the past to predict 20 years in the future in terms of finances, but I'm doing what I can so I know what to aim for. All right, everybody, so I hope that was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.